Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for August 1st, 2017. On today's show, I am joined by Ben Pearson, Hoai-Tran, and Jacob Hall, and we'll be talking about a variety of news, including the Emoji Movie being the worst reviewed movie of 2017, what Star Trek Discovery was originally going to be, Suicide Squad 2 losing its top choice director, a HBO hack, and what that might mean for the future of Game of Thrones, Dark Tower TV series that probably will never happen, and Bumblebee movie casting. Very unexpected casting. But first, we're going to go into the mailbag. Today in the mailbag, Stingray asks, what movie or TV show would you all like to see turned into a theme park land or ride? Let's go to HT first. HT, what is your pick?
Okay, so I had to discuss with everyone beforehand to see if there was a ride for this, but there is not. My choice is Atlantis: The Lost Empire, the Disney film from 2001. I would really love it, particularly because it's an underwater sort of world. It's really just fascinating and stunning to look at, and it would be a really cool adventure ride or theme park or whatever experience that they would offer if it were to ever happen.
Yeah, there's a shocking little amount of Atlantis in any of the Disney parks, I believe, at this point.
And
and
yeah, and it's a great film.
it's a good film, and it definitely has a good world building to it that would make for a good experience to be able to enter that world. Let's go to Ben. Ben, what would you like to see, movie or TV, turned into a theme park, ride, or land?
So I'm going to choose the obvious and go with the Lord of the Rings on this one. I would say there's definitely enough there to build out into an entire land. I think you can obviously have like a Hobbiton thing, maybe like for a more laid back, maybe kid friendly experience. And then you could ramp up the action as you progress through the park, maybe leading to like a Space Mountain-esque roller coaster within Mordor or something like that. I don't know. There's a ton of possibilities. You could have a flying on the back of an Eagles ride. I mean, there's a ton of stuff there with Lord of the Rings. And it's just like the idea of Rivendell and Lothlorien, all these sort of elf-inspired locations. The way James Cameron has created Avatar Land, there I feel like you could get something similarly visually dazzling out of a Lord of the Rings theme park.
Yeah, and this is another world building choice. It's interesting because they could do a series of lands, and they could even have later on with expansion pads they have the extended cut. The Peter Jackson extended cut of the lands,
or the
barrel
Hobbit
ride.
trilogy, built on exactly with the barrel ride.
Actually, that when I was watching that, I was like, that would be such a great theme park ride. And they've actually talked about doing a Lord of the Rings land. I believe when James Cameron was talking about Avatar land, one of the competing ideas was Lord of the Rings theme park land that Disney was considering, but it did not happen. Warner Brothers might be still in the mix of trying to get that made, and obviously they have that deal with Universal with the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, so it could happen, and that's successful.
There were stories that the Great Movie Ride back in the day was going to get a Lord of the Rings segment supposedly added over the Wizard of Oz to be the grand climax, but that never came to be either.
Oh, I forgot about that. And the Great Movie Ride we're going to be losing soon, sadly.
Yes.
Jacob Hall, one of the theme park experts at slashfilm.com. What I assume that you've thought long and hard about this. This is the question, like me. I've imagined many different rides. What rides or lands would you like to see?
Oh man, I could go niche here, but I'm not. I don't go popular. I want Game of Thrones. I want Westeros. And I've thought about this because with Harry Potter and Avatar, you have these worlds that are built to be places you want to visit. These places where it's like, man, I dream of being in the Harry Potter universe. What I love about Westeros is that you never want to visit there. So I want it to be a constant sense of danger and excitement. There's this, everything looks ugly. there are actors on the streets who look like they smell bad, who are maybe begging, or like evil-looking knights who are staring you down. Think of it like a Renaissance fair, but evil, where you go see a live stunt show, but things go horribly wrong in front of you. The ride possibilities: you get on the back of a dragon for a IMAX screen simulator soaring over Westeros. You book passage on a boat by the docks. The sail to Old Valeria, where you encounter monsters and stone men and things that leap out at you, and maybe you even have a live tour guide who maybe he's a mysterious Greyjoy who has ulterior motives to bring you out to these far-reaching areas. I feel like it would be Universal's Harry Potter areas, but made so much more threatening.
Yes, the problem with this. One of the problems with this is I don't think Game of Thrones has a huge young audience, as it should not. So this will probably never come to fruition. Although I would be so excited for the ride where you get to sit at a table and talk about all the factions of the land for like an hour straight. I'm the Game of Thrones. I'm the slash film Game of Thrones hater, so I have to throw that in there. I have so many that I would like to throw out there, but probably the most elaborate that I could imagine is the Jim Henson produced movie Labyrinth. I would like to see a whole land because I mean the world building of that is just so great. You could do animatronics with all the puppeteered characters. I can imagine a musical theater show with the Goblin King. You could have a journey through the maze dark ride. All the characters in that movie are just so great, and it'd be cool to go into that world. Sadly, that's an 80s movie that I don't think many kids these days have seen, so I don't think they're going to make a Labyrinth ride or a theme park. But other ones I want to throw out there. And, I was thinking, you mentioned niche. I was thinking, like, it would be cool to, like, come up with, like, something that was, like, a horror movie or, like, a big... something that they would never do a theme park ride of, but I couldn't really come up with one of those interesting enough. I kept on going back to were films of my childhood that I would like to go into, like Goonies. Like, I could imagine a Goonies ride. Like, when they announced Volcano Bay at Universal, they said it was going to be the first water theme park, and I was imagining it would actually have rides and be more themed than it is. I would love to see a Goonies ride at a water theme park that starts as like a dark ride where you're going through like basically the adventure that they went on, and it ends at like a water ride. You get out of the dark ride, the vehicles, and you actually have to go down that like tube into the water with the pirate ship. That would be so cool. Again, I'm a kid in the 80s, and many kids probably don't even care about that movie, so never going to happen. Gremlins is another one I'd like to see. I think there is a Gremlins ride somewhere internationally, which I've seen video of, and it's creepy. I would love to see there's so many Pixar movies I'd love to see rides of that will never happen. Like, I'd love to see, like, WALL-E and Up and whatnot. And I was thinking, is there a way to make that happen on a macro scale? So why not a ride that is a Pixar ride that takes you through all the worlds of Pixar?
Oh, that would be really cool.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Shades of the Hanna-Barbera ride that used to be at Universal Studios, where you would literally ride through all the Hanna-Barbera stuff in a motion simulator.
I forgot all about that. And lastly, the ride I think will actually happen is Moana. Like, that just is so perfect for a Disney, dark ride treatment with the songs and just, obviously, The Rock changing into the different things. Like, I feel like that would just be perfect for a dark ride. So that's all mine. Does anybody else have any other picks? Nope.
Jacob, anything?
I'm going to double down on Game of Thrones. Second land. Put King's Landing here in the north somewhere else. Force you to buy 2 tickets.
That is very smart and capitalist. Okay, let's move on to the news. First up in the news is the Emoji Movie came out and is the worst reviewed movie of 2017 so far. Ben, you wrote the article for slashfilm.com. What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so actually, as we're recording now, it looks like Rings has a 6% on Rotten Tomatoes, and the Emoji Movie has since garnered just enough positivity to bump it up to a 7% on Rotten Tomatoes. So I believe it's now the second lowest rated movie this year so far. But last week, it had a 0 on Friday morning. That is pretty awful for a major wide release film. It spent most of the weekend and definitely all of Friday at 3%. Yeah, pretty bad. I don't know if you guys have looked at the reviews of the Emoji Movie. They are all atrocious. Apparently, this is like the worst kind of product placement mishmash. Like, there's no real story here. There's no heart. There's no enjoyable characters. It just sounds like this was a truly bad idea from the ground up. And it's something that Sony must have known what they were getting themselves into, and they just had so little faith in the American public that they're like, you know what, most people are gonna come out and see this anyway. It's so cynical to make a movie based on emojis with a very an embarrassing plot, and just the creativity here. I mean, there's potential for it to be good, right? Because the Lego Movie sounds like a terrible idea on paper, but Tony Leonidas, who is the guy who directed the Emoji film, is no Lord and Miller, so it ended up being exactly as terrible as everyone thought it would be.
And the movie didn't even hit number one. Dunkirk, for the second weekend in a row, beat was number one, and it beat the Emoji Movie.
Yeah.
A lot of the studios are saying, Rotten Tomatoes is killing, business. A bad Rotten Tomatoes rating can kill your movie. What do you guys think about that? Is that the case, or is it just a bad movie? The buzz of a bad movie killing a bad movie.
I think a bad movie can kill a bad movie. So even kids these days will see that an Emoji Movie, they have it on their phone all the time. So why would they want to go see a movie about it?
Yeah.
And actually, Ben, I like that you called it at one point the Emoji Film, which made it sound a lot fancier than it is.
Yeah, that's true. That's probably doing it too much credit. I think with the concept that you just posed, Peter, I think War for the Planet of the Apes is maybe a good example of that whole idea of Rotten Tomatoes being able to, be the end all be all is probably a bunk idea or a debunked notion, because that movie got really great reviews but didn't open nearly as well as Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. So studios love to blame, push the blame on whatever they can at the moment, and I think Rotten Tomatoes has just become a target over the past a couple months, especially with some of the terrible movies that came out earlier this summer. But I don't know if that's really an argument that has much standing that I believe in.
Oh, for sure. And War for the Planet of the Apes is now at 118 million in the U.S., and Dawn did 208 million. I don't think it's going to beat that, which is unfortunate, because I think War for the Planet of the Apes is the best movie of the year so far. Wow. But moving on, Bryan Fuller he started making Star Trek Discovery as an anthology movie, an anthology series, which is kind of like how Fargo is run, or True Detective, where it's each season is going to be a new story. HT, you wrote this article for SlashFilm.com. What do we know about this?
So Bryan Fuller gave an interview to Entertainment Weekly that was surprisingly candid about how he left the project. It seems there aren't a lot of good feelings left between them, but he originally was attached to the project for a while. He's a really big Star Trek fan, and so he was really passionate about bringing this story to this big screen, to the small screen rather. So he said that his original pitch to CBS was to make it a science fiction anthology series similar to what American Horror Story had done for horror, and the other series that you mentioned earlier. And it was pretty high concept. It was going to start with Star Trek Discovery being a prequel as like the first season, and then venture on to the eras of Captain Kirk, Captain Picard, and then go beyond what we've seen in the films and the TV. And he also had insisted on having a woman of color as the lead, and he did get that with Sonequa Martin Green from Walking Dead, and he also wanted a director with more visual flair for the pilot, but this is where he and CBS clashed, where they clashed a lot of places, and it's where they ended up kind of leaving, and he exited the project to work on American Gods. So it's interesting. Yeah, I think in a Star Trek anthology series would be a really unique take on Star Trek, which is already a very like episodic series, but it would be a new modern way of bringing the series to the television. I think hasn't been done before. So I think he could have done it, and it would have been interesting to see, but it's unfortunate that CBS, being the conservative network that they are, it never happened.
Yeah, and this is also being produced digital, not for wide television, which I could see it costing a lot from season to season to completely reinvent the whatever the ship that they are on, going from different ship. Jacob, you are a big Star Trek nerd.
I am.
What do you think of this idea? Do you think that it would have been good, or do you think it's better off that we stick with one crew for, a bunch of seasons?
I love this idea, and I'm going to jump on a soapbox I've jumped on many times before, and that is that Star Trek Deep Space Nine is the best Star Trek series because it is the only series that allowed its characters to grow and change in significant ways to the point where the people we meet in season 1 are not the same people we meet in season 7. And with Star Trek Next Generation, an original series, and Star Trek Voyager, because there's this sense of this has to go on indefinitely, we have to have this crew around forever, we have to make sure we have 22 adventures every single year no matter what, there's this fear in the even the best Star Trek shows of we can't change this too much. These people are static. They have adventures, and that's it. Deep Space Nine was so unafraid to break things that it couldn't fix that it made for gripping television that feels modern for a show that was developed almost entirely in the 90s. And I feel like an anthology format would have forced Star Trek to feel like that. It was that we have 10 episodes with this crew. Let's plunge forward. Let's change them. Let's break them. Let's reshape them. Let's really dive deep into what it's like to be in this universe by narrowing our focus. And I think that's what Star Trek needs. And my concern is that a more traditional series will be something we've seen before again and again and again.
And I am excited that this is going to be not a non-episodic take on it, at least. Moving on, the director who was the top choice to direct Suicide Squad 2 is not going to direct Suicide Squad 2. He has signed on to instead direct Jungle Cruise for Disney. And the director I'm talking about is Juan Culet-Serra, who directed The Shallows, Nonstop, Orphan. You've seen his movies. He was the top choice for Warner Brothers to direct Suicide Squad 2. He hadn't signed on, but it sounds like he got swayed over at Disney to direct his own kind of Indiana Jones-esque adventure movie starring The Rock. And this is based on the Disneyland attraction, the popular Disneyland attraction, Jungle Cruise, which takes guests on a tour of the Amazon with cheeky jokes and whatnot. But it sounds like they're going to be taking a Pirates of the Caribbean, like big grand adventure take on this, which is interesting because Disney's also doing Indiana Jones. But you could see why he would choose this over Suicide Squad 2, which already it sounds like they were going less from the dark and gritty to the more bright and colorful new direction of the DC universe. Jacob, you're also a fan of the Disneyland, Disney World rides, and you're a fan of Jungle Cruise rather. What do you think about this choice as director for Jungle Cruise?
It's a weird choice because I like his movies a lot, but he makes great trash. The Shallows is great trash. The Orphan is a trash masterpiece, man. If these came out in the 80s, we'd be worshiping them. There'd be Mondo posters for them every few months. Mm-hmm. I think in 20 years we're going to look back at his filmography and say, man, that guy made like the best junk. I loved it. This is a graduation toward him making a Disney adventure movie starring The Rock. And part of me is like, oh, okay, a guy wants a franchise. A guy wants to make Disney dollars. He wants to expand his horizons, but also I'm like, why can't you go make more junk? Make more junk, please. But I can't argue against, a guy want to make a big movie. And the Jungle Cruise, I'm wary of it being a big adventure thing because part of its charms, that's low key, it's silly. The live skipper who's on your boat is giving you a barrage of intentionally bad jokes. And my concern is that they'll be wanting to Pirates of the Caribbeanize it and make it into a rip-roaring adventure full of punching and kicking, where I think all I really want is The Rock telling dad jokes.
Well, let's hope that's what we get. All I wanted is it to be fun. I don't need it to be dramatic and dark and gritty. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like the problem with the Pirates movies is they forgot to be fun.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. HBO has been hacked. HT, you wrote this article on slashfilm.com. What is going to happen? Are we going to get spoiled on Game of Thrones? Like, what actually happened here?
So HBO was reportedly hacked Sunday night, and the hackers claim to have obtained 1.5 terabytes of data. And we're not sure what shows they actually obtained, other than the released episodes of Ballers and Room 104 that they leaked online. And the hackers claim that they have a script from the 4th episode of Game of Thrones, as well as the episode itself. And they said that more will be coming soon. But HBO didn't confirm what shows actually got stolen and how many of them that got stolen. But the hackers seem to be focused on Game of Thrones, at least, so they might have gotten a couple of those episodes. So yeah, that happened Sunday night. HBO confirmed it on Monday morning, and it's been part of a trend of, I don't want to say trend, but a phenomenon of these companies being hacked lately. So Sony was the first one in 2014, and then Netflix was hacked with the season 5 episodes of Orange is the New Black, as well as Disney getting the Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Men Tell No Tales movie.
Yeah, which actually didn't end up being true. That was just a claim of a hacker. Yeah,
that was just a claim. So this also might just be a claim again, although they did leak the script that was reportedly the episode 4 of Game of Thrones. So who knows? We might be seeing some things on the internet in the next week or so that looks sketchy or is from Game of Thrones. So if you want to avoid spoilers, the internet is dark and full of spoilers.
Yes, you'll have to put your mute filters on in full force on Twitter. Moving on. The Dark Tower is not only a movie, but they plan on making a TV series. It probably won't happen because the movie's not going to do well. But we have some new news on this potential TV series. Ben, you wrote the article on slashfilm.com. Tell us about it.
Yes. So director Nikolai Arcel, who is making the film that comes out this week, spoke with our friend Kate Erbland at IndieWire, and in a new interview, he basically said that he revealed that he was part of the writing team for the first episode of the proposed television show, which is supposed to sort of fill in the gaps between movies. And like you mentioned, Peter, I doubt any of this is going to happen because the movie does not seem to be on a path to, blowing up and doing well. So I doubt any of this is going to be relevant. But in case it happens to meet financial expectations, the first season of the TV show is supposed to be, quote, very, very closely adhering to the Wizard and Glass novel and parts of the Gunslinger novel. And so that is the 4th book in the Dark Tower magnum opus saga that Stephen King wrote. And it is a prequel that sort of, well, you know what? I'm just going to throw this to Jacob since he's the one who's actually read all these damn things.
Well, specifically, Dark Tower 4 is an extended flashback, except for the bookends set in the modern time, to Roland's younger days. Roland being the gunslinger played by Idris Elba in the new movie, but him on his first mission with his friends, riding into a town, getting involved in a supernatural mission, falling in love, tragedy striking. And the first Dark Tower book, The Gunslinger, also features a flashback to an early training session with the man who helped him learn how to be a killer. So it's clear they're drawing from all these various sources, all these various flashbacks from books 1 and book 4 to tell a TV show. Interestingly, these stories also been told in chronological order before. Marvel Comics has a long-running Dark Tower comic book series that begins with these very earliest stories and has been telling the Dark Tower stuff in chronological order, picking up all the various flashbacks, all the various references, and they're just now getting into the core of the main books after like 10 years of them being written and drawn. So even if the series does not come to fruition, if you do want to know more, Marvel has it all. If you want to go hunt down those collections, they're still in print and easy to find. But this is not happening. They're never going to make this. So
yeah, and it's worth noting that the movie is supposed to be sort of taking elements from a lot of the different books instead of being just a straight adaptation of the first book, for example. So some fans are sort of uneasy about that. The movie is actually being presented as a canonical sequel to King's stories, and there's all these ways that the worlds intersect and all that stuff. You can read about that. We've written about it on the site. Yeah, the idea that a TV series would adhere closer to King's source material would probably make fans who are a little wary about this show happen. But yes, as we've mentioned, I doubt this is actually going to come to fruition.
It surprises me that they even thought that this could be adapted for the big screen and the small screen. Like this just seems, from someone who hasn't read any of it, it just seems so impossible to translate this epic, it's just so long and it's so complicated. It just seems like, unless you're going to do it as an HBO series, and even then it seems, I don't know, it just seems impossible. So we'll see, but I don't think it's going to happen either. Last up in the news, Bumblebee, the movie, has started filming, and we now know that John Cena is going to star in it. HT, you wrote this up for slashfilm.com. What do we know?
It's John Cena! Okay, so ignore that I said that. He has reportedly been cast in the Transformers spin-off movie, Bumblebee, in an unnamed lead role. So he will be joining the cast led by Haley Steinfeld. There's no details about his character yet, but it's likely that he will play an equal or supporting role to Haley Steinfeld. And
what's the chances that he plays either Haley's dad or he plays the gym teacher at the school?
The gym teacher. Actually, I was banking on the mechanic who owns the shop where Haley Steinfeld's character works.
Good call.
She's a supposed tomboy who works there after school, and he kind of has the build for a mechanic, and especially one who works at a shop in the 1980s, which I said in the story that I hope he changes his hair for the 1980s set, maybe like gets a mullet or something, although I don't know if that will happen. But yeah, he has surprisingly shown some good comedic chops in movies lately. So I don't know if that movie will be tapping into that for him, or if it'll give him a chance to stretch his dramatic legs. But yeah, it's an interesting piece of casting. I think this movie is actually shaping up to be quite promising, even though I haven't watched any Transformers movies since I fell asleep in the second one. Like the director, Travis Knight, I really love Kubo and the Two Strings. I love Haley Steinfeld. The John Cena's starting to get up there in terms of goodwill, and it's the fact that it's supposed to be an intimate coming of age movie about a girl in her car sounds very sweet and sounds like a much needed refresher from the spectacle and CGI that we've been getting with the other Transformers films. We've also gotten the official synopsis for the Bumblebee movie that I will read now. So, on the run in the year 1987, Bumblebee finds refuge in a junkyard in a small Californian beach town. Charlie, played by Haley Steinfeld, is on the cusp of turning 18 and trying to find her place in the world. She discovers Bumblebee, battle-scarred and broken. When Charlie revives him, she quickly learns that he is no ordinary yellow VW bug. So, yeah, it does sound very much like a girl and her car, in the vein of, movies like Okja or classic the Iron Giant, like Lorenzo di Bonaventura compared it to. So we'll see. It sounds promising.
I love that Bumblebee is going to be his classic VW bug form. John Cena, for me, as a person who used to be a wrestling fan, it doesn't seem like a guy that has as much range as like someone like The Rock. Please tell me why I should be excited about John Cena being like, what has he done that has impressed you?
So I surprisingly liked him in comedies like Trainwreck and Sisters, where he kind of played. In Sisters, he was sort of not really a straight man, but he was like a one joke character. But he was really funny. I don't know. He seems to have good comedic timing. I can't really explain it because I haven't seen that many things, but he's always been kind of a scene stealer, especially in Trainwreck, where he played a surprisingly emotional love interest or fling for Amy Schumer's character. So I don't know. I think it could be fun. Well, he definitely doesn't have the range of The Rock yet. I think just because he doesn't have quite the powerful eyebrows that Dwayne Johnson has. So it could be good if he just leaned into, his body type and his lack of facial expressions and use that as comedy. Physical comedy is just as important as facial comedy in acting.
For sure. And that does it for the news. HT, where can we find more of your work on the internet?
You can find me at slashfilm.com, and I also have a podcast called the Millennial Falcon Podcast, which is on SoundCloud and Google Play.
Ben, other than Slashfilm, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Ben Pears.
And Jacob, where can we find you in the corners of the internet?
Right now, as managing editor of Slashfilm, I'm there exclusively, whether you see my byline or not. If you want to see more from me, Twitter, Jacob S. Hall.
And you can find me at slashfilm.com and Twitter at slashfilm. This does it for this episode of Slashfilm Daily. If you like what we're doing, go to iTunes, give us a review, rate us. If you don't like what we're doing, send us an email, peter@slashfilm.com. That's also the email where you can send your questions for the mailbag. Please leave your name and general geographic location, just in case we use your question on the air, we can credit you. And we will see you tomorrow.